Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be doing my picks for Overwatch League 2020 week 25, the second week of qualifying matches for the Countdown Cup. Once again, we have 3 days of matches, 2 matches today, and then there are 7 matches once again tomorrow, just like last week. But this time there are 5 matches on Sunday with some additional Asia matches which were not present last week. I'm going to do the same format I did last week, so you will see my picks spreadsheet at the end of this video just like then. So let's jump into it and let's talk about my picks and talk about the games. The first one we have is the Atlanta Reign taking on the Boston Uprising. This one is the first of many games this week that I will think will likely end in a 3-0 result. The Atlanta Reign, up and down week last week, won one series to the against the Valiant, lost a series to the Mayhem. It was a good showing from the Reign, I thought. There were some places where they looked to be exploited by the Mayhem. Maybe some of that had to do with the fact that the Mayhem were able to scout the Reign's maps from the day before. I don't really think that had a huge impact on it. I just think at the end of the day, the Reign played in a style that wasn't as good. I don't think they played as aggressively as they had played against the Valiant. I think they played a little more passively, and I think it ended up costing them a little bit more than it should have. But I don't think they should have any trouble beating the Uprising. Uprising, one of the weakest teams in the league, if not the weakest team in the league. And I think that this should be a relatively easy win for the Atlanta Reign. I think they take this one. The Florida Mayhem take on the San Francisco Shock for the second and final game on Friday. This is one of my big pick games. I personally don't think it'll actually be that close. I think it'll probably be a pretty one-sided affair for the side of the San Francisco Shock. The San Francisco Shock have added Tayo to their roster. He is going to likely be their Genji player going forward. I don't think it is really much of a chance, or I don't think there's much of a chance for the Florida Mayhem in the series. Maybe they can be competitive. They haven't looked super competitive against the Shock in certain, or even in the May Melee Finals, which was the last time these two teams played. By the end of the series, it was pretty obvious that the Shock were going to win. The Mayhem had kind of exhausted a lot of their maps. I think the Shock win this one somewhat easily. I think they're a better team now than they were even then, and I think that they take this one 3-1, 3-2, but I think the Shock win this one. Moving on to Saturday, I have my second big pick match, which is the Seoul Dynasty against the Chengdu Hunters. I actually found this one somewhat difficult to pick. The Dynasty and the Hunters have kind of split the series somewhat this season. The Dynasty won the last one that they played, if my memory serves me correctly. That is the gameplay that you're seeing now. The Dynasty, I thought they would beat the Hangzhou Spark this past weekend. They got completely embarrassed by the Hangzhou Spark. The Chengdu Hunters had a reverse sweep win over the NYXL, so it's a bit of an up and down type of situation here. Two teams that are kind of on opposite ends of where we expect them to be. I think everyone thought the Hunters would lose last week, and a lot of people thought the Dynasty would win. That didn't happen. I think the Dynasty should win this one. I think that they have shown more promise in a lot of recent weeks. I think they're not playing as inconsistently. I think the Hangzhou Spark are just kind of getting back up to where we believed they were. This is a series I'm really looking out for. I think the Dynasty win this one, probably 3-1, maybe 3-2. Could be a 3-0. I think this one really could go either way. It could be any score, and I wouldn't be surprised. But I like the Dynasty better because I think that they have shown more still throughout the season than the Hunters have. Yes, the Hunters just had a big win over New York. Hunters have also beaten Shanghai. Hunters have also beaten a number of other teams. I think any team can lose to the Hunters on any given day. But for the most part, I think the Dynasty should be able to take the win over the Chengdu Hunters. Shanghai Dragons will be taking on the London Spitfire, the second match on Saturday. These two teams had a good series when they played in the May Melee. When they played immediately after the May Melee, it was one of the worst games I've ever seen. The London Spitfire, way too passive, way too scared of the Shanghai Dragons. I don't know if they've improved since then. I don't know if we should expect the same type of performance out of them. I certainly hope not. But the Shanghai Dragons are really good. They haven't played yet since the start of the Countdown Cup qualifiers. This will be the first match for the Shanghai Dragons here in this, post-summer showdown. I think that the Dragons are likely to take this series. I think they're the better team. While the Spitfire have shown a ton of improvement and have looked better as of recently, I still think the Dragons are the team to beat in Asia. I know they lost the Summer Showdown. I thought that the Dragons made some weird roster decisions. I thought they didn't have the best performances on certain heroes. I thought that Fleta's Genji wasn't the best. I don't really think that that's going to hold them back from a team like the Spitfire, where I still think the Dragons are better than the Spitfire. It's not like a team like, say, the Guangzhou Charge, right? The Guangzhou Charge are a really good team. They have really good coordination, and they had one of the best Genjis in Asia during the Summer Showdown. London is not that team. I think the Dragons should have very little difficulty beating this Spitfire squad. The final Asia match on Saturday is the NYXL taking on the Guangzhou Charge. I'm picking the Guangzhou Charge. I picked them the last time they played. I think that they are still the better team. I think they are arguably the best team in Asia right now. I have very little faith in New York right now. They haven't looked good. They have really, really, really struggled throughout this season, and I don't see the NYXL taking this one. Maybe the fact that they're now playing together and they've had a week extra kind of under their belt being able to play together. They had that loss to Chengdu last week. Maybe they bounce back. Maybe they come out and they say, we're not going to do that again. They have the nice win over the Guangzhou Charge. I don't know. Right now, I have more faith in the Charge. They have looked better. They looked good last week against the London Spitfire. Not the strongest opponent, but a better opponent than what New York played. And I think the Charge had really, really, really shown that they are a top-tier team. They're one of the top teams in Asia right now, one of the top teams in the league right now. I don't think New York is really going to put up enough of a fight to slow down this Charge team. Moving on to North America, we have the first match of the season between the San Francisco Shock and the Vancouver Titans, a rematch of the 2019 Grand Finals. Obviously, very different Titans roster, and in many ways, a very different Shock roster. Twilight from the Titans now on the Shock. Shock have added Tayo, they've added Ance. So, a different team here, and the Titans, of course, entirely different team. So while the original rivalry is, not to be expected, because it's a completely different set of players coming from the Vancouver Titans side, it is going to be an interesting thing to see. They're going to talk about the fact that these teams played in their grand finals, even though it's really not the same team. The Shock are going to win the series. I think there's no doubt in my mind about that. The Titans have been okay. This new roster has struggled a lot. They found some success, but not enough success for me to be able to say they're able to beat the San Francisco Shock. Shock are still a top team. They are still one of the most dominant teams in the Overwatch League, and I think the Shock take this one pretty easily. Tayo's second game with the team, I think they're going to give Tayo a lot of playtime in this Titans match in particular. I think we'll get some playtime in the Mayhem one, but I definitely think we'll see some Tayo in this Titans one. And I think we'll see probably Tayo the whole series, just to let him, be able to play against some players who he has some experience playing against the contenders. But this way you get him more used to playing with his new teammates and as well playing at the Overwatch League level. Next, the Florida Mayhem take on the Washington Justice. Once again, a series I think is going to be super one-sided. I think that the Mayhem win this one easily, 3-0 most likely. Not a very good match. I don't think the Justice have particularly looked all that great. They had an okay performance last week against the Toronto Defiant, but it wasn't anything to hype up or write home about. They struggled. They did get that win over the Gladiators in the Summer Showdown, but other than that, they have been relatively weak and relatively unexciting to watch. So, I think the Mayhem take this one easily. Mayhem are the better team, in my opinion, and I think that they take this one pretty easily. Next, the Boston Uprising take on the Dallas Fuel. Another match that is the first time that it has happened this season. The Boston Uprising and the Dallas Fuel have not played yet this season. This will be the first time they play this season, And I think this one is going to very, very, very easily go in the direction of the Dallas Fuel. Dallas Fuel coming off a huge win over the Houston Outlaws this past weekend. Now they have the chance to bring their record within one game of 500. A win over the Boston Uprising will put them at 7-8. That is huge for a team that is trying to compete for the playoffs. They're not a team right now that I think has a great shot at going the distance, but a win over the Boston Uprising would certainly help them. It would help their season standings. It would help their seeding. And I think that the Fuel want to take every win they can get, and this one should be pretty easy for them. Not the toughest go for them this time around in the Countdown Cup. Obviously, the win over the Houston Outlaws, very good for them. A game against the Boston Uprising helps as well. Next week, more difficult, playing the Fusion and the Reign, but I think there's a chance that this team goes 2-2, maybe 3-1. But this win over the Uprising, I think, is pretty much guaranteed. I think the Fuel should take that one pretty easily. Final match on Saturday is the Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators. Gladiators, somewhat disappointing so far this season. Not the worst result last week when they took the win in relatively easy fashion against the Vancouver Titans. Gladiators have been up and down so far this season. Recently, they've been in more of a downward swing, but obviously the win last week helps them out a lot. The Fusion, however, are really, really, really good. They are one of the best teams in the league right now. This is the first time they have played in the Countdown Cup qualifiers. They didn't play last week, so these are their first matches. I think they're going to be really good. I think they win this one easily. Fusion are a team I'm really excited to watch. They got beat in the May Melee semifinals. They got beat in the Summer Showdown finals. I think this Fusion team is angry. This Fusion team is motivated, and they want to prove that they can win the Countdown Cup, and their quest for it starts with this series against the Gladiators, which I think they take. Moving on to Sunday, we have the Chengdu Hunters taking on the Hangzhou Spark. First match of the weekend for the Spark. I think this is a good matchup for them. They have never, ever lost to the Chengdu Hunters. There's a lot of teams that the Hangzhou Spark have had very close records against. They've never lost to the Chengdu Hunters. I don't think that happens this weekend. I think the Spark are too good for that. They looked very good this past weekend. When QOQ and Gushui are able to have perfect synergy, when Architect and Godsby have good synergy as well when they're up to form, when the support line's playing well together, this Hangzhou Spark team is one of the best teams in Asia. They could easily make a run in the Countdown Cup, or they could easily make a run in the end of season playoffs to go potentially be one of the 4 teams at the end of the season in Asia. It would be very difficult for this Spark team, but not impossible. This is a very good Spark team, one who I think you have to look at as a potential favorite in the Countdown Cup based on what they did last weekend. Obviously, one match. We have to see some more of them. We have to see how they perform against the Hunters this week, and as well how they perform next week, because you can't really judge a team based on just 2 matches. But a matchup next week against the London Spitfire, a team who they lost to the last time they played, is really helpful for this team. They need this win over the Hunters, and they would love the win over the London Spitfire to prove that they are back on the upward swing. I think they should take this one. I've loved what I've seen from them when they're at their best, and right now they look to be close to, if not at, their best. Final Asia game for the weekend is the Shanghai Dragons taking on the Seoul Dynasty, a rematch of the May Melee Finals, the Summer Showdown semifinals. These teams have played a lot. I kind of hate it. The worst part about Asia is how often the teams play each other. It's not really that interesting and that exciting at this point anymore. You just see the same kind of matches every weekend. These 2 teams in particular have played a lot with the Dynasty, only taking 1 so far. I think the Dragons win this one. I think that the Dragons really want to win the Countdown Cup after the way that they lost the Summer Showdown, because I think that they are a team who have shown a lot of promise and have been one of the top teams in the league in terms of just by the way you would look at them, you'd consider them one of the top teams. But this is a chance for them to really, once again, hammer in how good they are against a Dynasty team who have found some success against them, but mostly have struggled against the Dragons. I'm going with the Dragons in the series, obviously. I think that this one should be pretty good. This one could be a pretty close series. I'd keep my eye on this one. I don't have it as a big pick because I think that it is going to go the way of the Dragons, and I feel very confident about that. But this is one that I think you should keep an eye on if you are a fan of the Asia region or if you're just a fan of the Overwatch League in general, because this one could be one of the best matches of the weekend. Moving on to North America for Sunday, LA Gladiators taking on the Paris Eternal. First match of the weekend for the Eternal, the only match of the weekend for the Eternal. I love the Paris Eternal. I think that they have a really good shot at winning this one. I think they have a really good shot at repeating as Countdown Cup champions based on the way we saw them play this past weekend. They looked really, really good. I want to see them play the Gladiators again. A pretty good team. Not the best team in the league, but a pretty good team. A team who's performed at a high level throughout the season at times. The Eternal beat them the last time these two teams played. I think the Eternal need to prove that they can keep beating teams who are lower than they are consistently and dominantly. This team has 3 3-0 sweeps all season. 2 of them were last weekend. So the Eternal need to keep up those high-level performances. They need to be able to win big, prove themselves as a top-level team in the Overwatch League, and the LA Gladiators are the perfect opponent for them to be able to do that against. Gladiators are not the best team in the league right now. They have 2 matches in the weekend. You get to play them after, they've already played the Fusion. You can embarrass them 2 days in a row. Fusion, Eternal. I think this is a huge game for the Eternal. I think the Eternal walk away from this one with a win. And I think it helps them and puts them on a path towards victory going into the Countdown Cup. The Toronto Defiant will be taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. These two teams played in the Summer Showdown semifinals, and it wasn't even close. The Philadelphia Fusion dominant over the Toronto Defiant last time these two teams played. I don't expect anything different. I think the Defiant are a team that is on the rise. They've certainly improved a ton over time, and they've improved a lot since the last time they played against the Fusion. I think they looked pretty good, especially this past weekend when they played the Washington Justice, and I don't think they looked too bad when they played against the Paris Eternal, seeing as the Paris Eternal are a really good team, and they've had a lot of high-level performances so far this season. But I think the match is going to go the way of the Fusion, because the Fusion have just been that good. They've been that dominant. When you have an MVP candidate in Carpe, the assumed MVP favorite in Carpe, having still an incredible season, you have an incredible support line, all of whom have been having really, really, really good performances. Your tank line is playing really well. This is a Fusion team who are better than they've been in a while. I think they look to be better than they were going into the Summer Showdown. I think in the Summer Showdown they proved how good they were. I think they're hungry. I think they really, really, really want to get a big win in a big match, and I think this is the chance for them to do that. Fusion win this one, I think, 3-0. I think it's a pretty dominant victory for them. Final match of the week, Washington Justice taking on the Houston Outlaws. Houston Outlaws, heartbreaking loss last week to the Dallas Fuel. I don't think they allowed that to happen again. I think they take this one against the Washington Justice. Justice, not a great team. They haven't looked very good. They've had a couple of good performances, but for the most part, the Justice have struggled all season. I think the Outlaws take this one. I think they have some room to grow. The Outlaws, they haven't looked perfect, but I think they have enough going on around the team. Great support line, great DPS duo, whoever you're running there. I mean, Linkser has been having a pretty good season. Dante's, of course, having a great season. Blase's been doing pretty well. And then you have a really good flex tank in Meko. This is a really good team. I think they win most of the matchups with the Justice just positionally anyway. And I think the Outlaws take this series pretty easily and are the winners of the final match of the week. So here's a quick look at my picks once again, just so you can refresh your memory. But that is everything I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more stuff like this in the future. And thank you again. I've been very much enjoying this new format. I like this new format a lot. So thank you so much for your feedback recently. A lot of the videos recently have been getting some great feedback. So I thank you so much for that. But I'm going to get out of here. So thank you once again. Hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy. And I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.